down.
You are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Suns Show.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Even though the Phoenix Suns did not join the basketball court last Sunday, I appreciate you guys are joining us for a live show of the Suns Solar Panel a week later at the beginning of a 4-month off season where nothing actually is going to, there'll be maybe 3 things are going to happen in the next 4 months. We're going to spend every weekend talking about the potential of those 3 things, what other 3 things might happen, what did happen, how it all unfolded, and I'm really glad you guys are here to join us for the entire summer, because if you're here today, you're going to be here all summer. I am Dave King NBA. This is the Solar Panel. On my panel this morning, we have Jake, our Coach Fallen founder. How's it going, Jake?
Doing well. Like I mentioned, I'm just a little disappointed that this shirt happened to arrive during round 2, and now it's not nearly going to have as much value moving forward.
What shirt is it that you're wearing?
I'm wearing, for the audio listeners, I'm foul around and find out, as I like to call it. Foul Jay Crowder shirt. It's my Foul Jay Crowder shirt, just in case.
That's what it was.
We want that YouTube money to come in.
And PLR, Paul Richardson from the Cave Show. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good. I am great. It's another day. I was able to get vertical, so life is good.
You were able to climb out of bed.
Yes.
All
yes.
Right. Just making sure that was the vertical you were talking about. Okay.
I like what. Don't you still do that commercial? I was just saying. I'm trying to give you an assist. You don't have the special commercial anymore. Oh,
no.
Dang it. Oh well, dang it. You just had a turnover then. I take my assist back.
I did have a turnover. Hey, what am I, a Phoenix Sun?
I was going to say, that's giving me flashbacks, guys. Not right now. PTSD.
I'll just say that you're Chris Paul. Usually perfect assists turn into turnovers right into the hands of the other team. So we could do that. All right, man. We have a good show for you today. We're gonna talk all things Phoenix Suns, and there actually is stuff to talk about, even though the Suns season is over. PLR and I have a lot of experience covering Suns teams when the playoffs are going on and the Suns are not in them. And Jake, you've been a fan for as long as you can probably remember, and you've been thinking about the Suns even when they're not in the playoffs. So this is nothing new for us. We're totally into this. This is like my lane. So let's recap. First of all, let's make sure everybody is on board with where we are. Nobody wants to really relive what happened, but we're going to talk about it just for a minute. The Suns lost Game 7 since the last time we talked on this show. They were favored by 6.5 points at home. They lost by, I think, 843 points, and it felt like even more than that. The Suns came out flat as hell. Everybody admitted they came out flat. Nobody had a good reason for them to come out flat. We still don't have a good reason for the Suns to come out flat, but they had a chance to move on to the Western Conference Finals. And it sure looked to me, when I watched that game, that at least Devin Booker and Chris Paul had very little interest in continuing to continue their playoff run this year. That's what I took away from it. Looks like they were not energized by the chance to play the Golden State Warriors or anybody else in the next round. They were actually just trying to finish out the season on that day. And I have not seen that kind of attitude since Monty Williams came to the team. Jake, what did you see?
Exactly. Where was the fight? At least with, some of those 7 seconds or less Suns, like you could kind of tell sometimes when it was going to get to the end of the season because they'd be fighting, they'd be scrapping, but the Spurs would be there. They just couldn't jump over Tim Duncan on every play, or Dirk would get in the way, or some other team. And as much as you thought, just maybe a couple more shots from Steve Nash from 3, we'd be in it. This was just, first quarter tip off, and it looked like, okay, let's give it a shot here. And then 2 baskets later, it's like, okay, well, we always wanted to go to Mexico at this time of year anyway. It's beautiful.
We got Lakers fan in the chat saying the Suns will never win a championship ever. All right, buddy.
Appreciate
What are you
that,
doing
Lakers.
here? Are you so sad in your little life that you, with the Lakers who haven't played in how many months? Is it 6 months or is it only a couple of months? The Lakers haven't played a game. You're now trolling other YouTube shows to try to say that other teams are as bad as you. No, nobody's as bad as the Lakers. Goodbye. PLR, what do you think you saw last Sunday? Why do you think the Suns didn't show up?
I go back to what I've been saying all week. It's that infamous Mike Tyson line. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And I think the Suns, I don't want to say they gave up, because I don't think you give up, but I think they relegated themselves to the fact that this is just not our day. And I don't know if you classify that as giving up, but
how did they decide that before the tip that it wasn't their day?
Because I think a couple things happened. Luka came out hot, and I think, in all honesty, they should have been mentally prepared for that, because he was 5 for 30 from the arc coming into that game, and you knew he wasn't going to stay 5 for 30, right? So you had to mentally be prepared for that. I don't think what they were mentally prepared for, though, was that they couldn't throw a rock into the ocean. And I think when you have the combination of Luka coming out hot, he getting his teammates into it, you can't hit anything. They're blitzing you. You look, ill prepared. I think honestly, about 6 minutes in, they were just like, crap. We getting our butts kicked today, and they accepted it, as opposed to, like Jake said, kicking back, fighting back, like you said with the 07, the Steve Nash 7 seconds left. Keep fighting. This team, for whatever reason, checked out. And honestly, I blame a lot of people for that. I do. And I think a lot of it has to do with DA.
You're still giving them the credit for having even thought they could win or expected to win at tip. I don't think they even came into the game, the players, at least Devin Booker and Chris Paul, with a desire to win that game, because even the first few minutes, it didn't look like, you're describing, Luka made a few shots and all of a sudden they lost their will to play. That's ridiculous. First of all, they've come back and beaten. They had the best record in the league after being down 3 quarters. This team, as a team, generally has so much confidence that they don't care if they're down in the second half, let alone the first quarter. You're giving them too much credit. I think they just came in not expecting to win at all. But for some reason, they just wanted to walk out the game and go to Cancun.
It's different. Regular season wins are different. And what they found was last year, everything worked for them. Everything they did worked for them. It worked against LA, worked against Denver, worked against the Clippers. And it really didn't work, obviously, for the last 4 games against Milwaukee. So they come back this year, they do the exact same thing, and it works. Well, people said, hey, we're not going to let you do the same crap to us again when the playoffs started. And they scouted them for what they did. I do think they came out to win, but I think as soon as it went against them, they changed. You know what? A friend of mine, a friend of ours really that's in the business, said something to me. He said, the Phoenix Suns were like that video game. When you start playing and you start getting your butt kicked, you just turn it off and start over, as opposed to fighting through and saving it. And he said, I felt what they did was when they started getting their butts kicked, they just turned the video game off. They started to win the game. They wanted to win. They turned it on to win. But as soon as they started they weren't going to win, restart, let's do it again. And that's what I'm saying. I think they came out
but in that scenario, I feel like the Suns, as the player in that video game, came in totally drunk, hungover, whatever it was, not ready to play, forgot what the shoot button was, forgot how to move around using the toggle buttons, and we're getting killed. And they're like, all right, I got to start this over. And they're going to go to a whole nother game because they were totally checked out. Well, no, that they weren't even ready to play a video game that day. I think that's just ridiculous. It's just I'm so disappointed in that team.
Do you guys play NBA 2K ever?
Well, obviously Dave doesn't, because he's still saying toggle. This isn't Sega, man. There's an R1 and an
not
R2.
Atari.
This is not Sega. There's this thing called an Xbox.
No, it just reminds me.
Talking about.
No, but so NBA 2K kind of like redid some of their control schemes. I remember, and it used to be what we'd consider kind of easy, people would just be able to mash a few buttons and have their fast player dribble around the slower guy. And this last iteration, or the one before that, they kind of said, okay, no, like somebody can bump you and you can't just drive around them. You have to use more of the toggle switches back and forth for Dave to kind of break down with dribbling and to get around your opponent. And all the comments online were like, why'd they change it? This is ridiculous. And it kind of was like, yeah, as PLR said, it's like somebody's like, no, this is just how we play it. This is how it's going to go. And if I can't win, then I'm just shutting it off. The kid that wants to take the ball and go home. And I mean, I feel like I've seen every excuse recently. I saw an article that I unfortunately read that was one of the big reasons why they struggled was because Deandre Ayton sometimes only gets a few hours of sleep a night because he's up late playing video games, and how will that affect him when trying to get a max contract? And I thought this is right up there this is right up there with. I just got to say this, but some Suns fans have been saying, this is because of Suns fans. The guy counting $100 bills, the Suns and 4 kid. Then they started saying Suns and exactly like that's our own frustrations as fans to be like, I need something to be upset about.
This is a regular thing. Yeah. Look, man, I got to talk about it. This is a regular thing. There are fans out there who actually think they have any impact on the game that's being played one way or another. I'm superstitious. I think the shirt I wear one day impacts whether they win or not. But there are actual fans who think like their catcalling in the stands or whatever it is can impact. These players don't care about that, man. They don't react to it. They've been hearing it their whole lives. So I think that's funny that there are a lot of fans who think that they have nothing to do with it. The guy counting money has nothing to do with whether the Suns win or lose.
Right.
So sorry to cut you off there, but
no. Have either of you two seen the mediocre to bad movie that I'm one of those people that actually likes it though, that starred Keanu Reeves. I think it came out in the early 2000s called The Replacements. Is a football movie.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies ever.
Really? Okay.
I Will Survive is the greatest line dance ever done, man.
In fact, good. Let's go tip Dave's car over as soon as this is done.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Give it a tune-up afterwards.
We'll start with yours, PLR.
No, but there's a scene in that. I wonder if you guys remember it, where they said, okay, hey, let's talk about fears. And a lot of these guys had played at some point, college or professional, in the storyline. And finally, Keanu Reeves, after some jokes, goes out. He says, quicksand. And that to me was so much this series and a little bit even last series of you think things are going right, and then one thing goes wrong and another until basically it snowballs. You can't breathe, you can't move. Everyone gets locked up. And he goes, because you're in over your head. And that's when the coach kind of connects the dots for everyone, says, you guys have been giving something athletes always dream of, a second chance, and you're afraid of blowing it. We have to keep in mind, it's been a bit of a sharp roller coaster ride for the Suns team, where the decade of despair led into, hey, you guys just made the playoffs. Actually, you're going all the way to the finals. Congratulations. You guys are that good, to getting bounced. I mean, Chris Paul he keeps probably thinking in the back of his head, how many more chances am I going to get? Devin Booker and some of these guys thought, hey, we couldn't make the playoffs. Now we're in the finals. How fantastic are we? Do we even have to sweat these other guys? And I think sports psychology plays a lot into it. And Jam, you make a good point about sleep is critical to performance. I think sports psychology is a big thing for these players, because sometimes they're just like wondering, DeAndre Ayton's probably sitting there after a little bit, just, getting frustrated and going, you know what? I should have got my money. I should have fought harder to get my big payday right out of the gate. And, all these things kind of start to flow in the back of their heads, and then they get locked up. They get tense. Those 3-point shots that they were chucking up were just brutal. Like it was, they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn.
Some things were happening, man, because I don't know. I'm just so frustrated because Booker only took 7 shots in the before the Suns got down 40. CP only took 5 shots before they got down by 40 in game 7. This isn't them locking up in terms of like coming up short on their shots. Devin Booker, we all have seen Devin Booker for 7 years. If he misses his first 7 shots, he's going to take 7 more in the next 2 minutes just because. And he wasn't. CP was not trying to take over the game like he had been earlier in the year. Something was going on that is beyond, and it could be that they all just kind of hit a wall, mental exhaustion kind of thing. It is look, I don't want to give these guys excuses because they don't deserve it. Okay. But it is true that they played more games in the last 18 months than any NBA team other than the Milwaukee Bucks. They barely got 2 months off between seasons. And Devin Booker got even less time off because he went to the Olympics. It is possible that they'll discover that they were more tired than they should have been, and mental fatigue is a thing. I don't think fear played a role, but it could have, because I'm just not somebody who feels that fear and underperforms because of fear. I just underperform because I suck at it at basketball, but I don't underperform because of fear. And I don't think they did, but it's possible they did, I guess, I suppose.
Well,
I
and
think they
maybe
just
fear is not
lost
the
their
right.
way.
Yeah, it's just when one guy can't see his shot going in, and we saw this with Campaign, right? He just never snapped out of that.
Oh,
I mean,
Campaign never snapped out for
yeah.
sure.
So it just kind of builds in your
This is
mindset.
an under talked about part, and I don't want to give anyone excuses because they don't deserve it. But Campaign was not an option this offseason, this playoffs, like he was a year ago. Campaign was a really good backup a year ago when Chris Paul needed support. This year he was a nothing. They even benched him by the end of the playoff run. That's how bad he was, and there was nobody to really back up Chris Paul. PLR, do you think fear was involved here?
Yes, I do, but I don't. I think it was I do. I think a lot of it. I think there's two things. I think that's a great point, Jake, with the fear. I also think sometimes it's hard to look at yourself and say we just weren't good enough. I mean, if we could talk about, there's been so much emphasis put on Game 7 that we forget about Game 3, 4, and 6, where they just weren't good enough. And if we even go back to the Pelicans series, if the Pelicans had one more dude, Suns would have been eliminated then. They just weren't good enough in playoff basketball. We could talk about the regular season all we want. We could say they won 64 games. They did,
but
this,
they proved
did
last year they know how to win in the playoffs,
but teams, but every year, remember, every game in the playoff is another game. Every year in the playoffs is another year. You can't always do what you did last year and say, well, we've proven it. Yeah, but the things that you did, there's film on you. There's tape on you. You know what? We're not going to let Chris Paul have freedom. We're going to be physical. We're going to be physical. We're going to bump him. There's only rest day, one day in between every game. And in all honesty, we're going to wear his old ass out. And you know what? We're not going to let Devin Booker come off those dribble handoffs free. We're going to blitz him. And you know what? We're going to see if Mikal Bridges is really ready to hit open shots. We're going to really see if Cam Johnson, who everyone was crying about should be in a three-point contest, can really hit some threes when it really matters. We're going to see if Deandre Ayton really wants that max money. Teams stepped up and said, we're going to challenge everything you do, and they didn't meet that challenge. So maybe they just weren't good enough to meet that challenge. I'm not saying they never will be. I'm not saying during the regular season they weren't, but during the playoffs, they didn't step up. And maybe the Suns need to take an internal look at the way the roster is put together and say, hey, maybe we need one more three-point shooter. As much as we love Jay, maybe we need a bigger power forward to get in there and stop some of those tap backs. Maybe they just weren't good enough.
Okay, so you're talking about maybe they just weren't good enough. And I think there's a distinction between they didn't play well enough versus they weren't good enough as far as talent and scheme. I think it's the former, where they just didn't play well enough. They lost their way, but this same talent and scheme can get to a finals again, is my opinion. So let me ask you guys, and we're going to ask in the chat as well. This is our first true false. This is not the actual true false section,
Okay.
but I'm going to ask you guys.
we jumped real fast on that.
Yeah, I was looking over to him like, wait a second.
True false. The Suns if they ran this team back, the starters, and I'm only talking about the starters, the bench is going to change. Look, man, every summer, 40% of a team changes. I'm talking about the top 4, 5, 6 guys. Okay. The starters plus Cam Johnson. if those guys come back next year as a unit, true false, they can reach the finals again and can play to become a favorite, one of the favorites to get out of the West. True false, Jake.
Ooh.
Top 6 guys come back.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think it's true in the sense that there's going to be some things that go right, but as the cliche, of course, with aging players, father time remains undefeated. Chris Paul, I mean, at this point, it's amazing how healthy he was going into the finals, and he was playing without an arm. So I don't know what was slowing him down this last time, and I don't even know. I've heard people say switch him to like the John Stockton minutes where he never goes over 30 minutes in the regular season or something. I just don't know if that's going to be a thing. So if there's a way that as you point out, the bench can change and you can get maybe some role players in there that's going to take some of the shot creation off their hands, and that's going to help them out a little bit. Can the team do it? Absolutely, because I expect Mikal to get better. I expect DeAndre, if he stays with us, to again improve, Booker to improve, Cam to improve, those guys. But I expect Paul to not get any better than he's at right now. In fact, I would assume that he's going to dial back a bit. I think Jay Crowder is where he's at now in his career, and that's still very serviceable. But so I think it might take a few, kind of good matchups for us to get back there. I wouldn't, if we come back and win 60 games with essentially the same starting core, I would not feel confident until we're actually in the finals that we have a chance to win the finals.
Well, maybe that's what they need, because they need some. Monty was talking about appropriate fear in the first series, that they were lacking. Well, he was saying they need to feel the appropriate fear, which means, in Monty speak, we're lacking it. We think we're just going to win these games, and we're not. So we need to have appropriate fear. I hope the players feel like they have to prove they can get back to the finals, because I think they came into this playoffs assuming they were going to at least make the conference finals, if not the finals. And it's possible that Game 7 they did lock up because of that. But again, so we've got basically a split between trues and falses among Suns fans in this on this chat right now. Buckdog says our system was exposed. Well, the Suns were getting credit for having a system that had counters upon counters upon counters. I don't know how Dallas suddenly figured that out. The Pelicans figured it out a totally different way than Dallas did. I think the Suns beat themselves against Dallas. I think the Suns beat themselves against the Pelicans. I don't know if the Suns could have beaten the Golden State Warriors, but playing their best with the swag and the confidence and playing well, they could have beat anybody this year. It's funny, the SB Nation puts out a poll every week for Suns fans, or national fans, to answer. So they asked the nation, across the whole nation, the fans that were signed up to take these weekly polls for fans of 30 teams, are the Suns a contender next year? Will they enter next year as a contender? Of course, that assumption is that nobody changes, right? The top 5. Over 50% of national fans think the Suns will be a contender next year. And then they were also asked, is Devin Booker still a 1A? And 60% of them said yes. So nationally, we're probably a little harsher on our own team than nationally, but that's okay. It's okay to dish your own brother. It's not okay for somebody else to, kind of thing. We have the right to be absolutely pissed off by this team. We have the right to, in this moment, question everything about them. We'll also probably feel an unbridled sense of they're going to be a championship contender by the time we get to September, because we'll have had so much time off. We're all going to be talking about how great they are, even if they didn't make any changes. The Suns will change. I was just asking if the top 6 doesn't. I did do some research a year ago. I'm going to give you guys a special.
Dang, stat me. Dang, stat me.
That was a double hit, because it took me forever to put this research together a year ago, because I was curious how many teams don't make it back to the finals after one appearance. Do you guys know? And with the same, what I was doing was, how many teams only make it to one finals with the same combination of the top 2 players and the coach. Okay, top
Well,
2
what's
players and the
the
coach.
what's the timeline of how soon they have to get back?
Well, within having the same top 2 players and coach, which in the
Gotcha.
NBA is a very small timeline because nobody has any patience in the NBA. Okay, so how many teams? What's the percentage of teams that make the finals get back there with the same top 2 players and coach? You guys have a guess?
Oh, well, LeBron did it like every year for like for all the ones he lost.
No, I'm
and
not
then-
talking about one player. I'm talking about top 2 players and coach because that's what the Suns situation is. LeBron had a lot of changes to his players.
But I mean, the top. Let's see.
I would think a lot of it, but 75%.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've been
Spurs
kind
are-
of some teams will drop out, but otherwise it's kind of usually the same 4 or 5 teams year in
All
and
the
year
time.
out until one finally drops off after about 5 years. And
So you'd be surprised that actually very few teams make it back to the finals again with the same top 2 players and coach. You're talking the Spurs, they lasted forever, right? With Timmy but they actually changed their number 2 from David Robinson to, I guess you would say, Tony Parker, maybe Manu Ginobili. But then you've got the Celtics of the Kevin Garnett years. They made a couple of finals. The Warriors made 5 finals. The Heat made 4 finals in the early 2010s with LeBron and Dwayne Wade. But other than that, you have the Lakers of the Shaq and Kobe years, and you've got the Lakers of the Pau Gasol and Kobe years with also
Sixers.
Phil
What
Jackson.
about the Sixers with Dr. J and?
Well, I didn't go.
Way
I only
back.
went 20 years back.
Oh, okay.
I got real tired. 23 years. But really, you don't. You have the Nets with Jason Kidd made it to 2 finals. They got swept both times, I think.
yeah,
And the Pistons with the Chauncey Billups Pistons teams made a couple of finals with the same. But that's about it. Most everybody only gets to 1 finals with the same top 2 and coach. It's just tough. It's tough.
I think the answer though is false. The Suns got to get a real 4. Jay Crowder is great.
I don't
If Jay
understand
Crowder
this
comes
real
off the
4 crap. But anyway, go ahead.
well, okay. Well, he's
You guys are
undersized.
you guys 90s or what?
Well, okay. We could call it the 90s. We could call it whatever. But him playing the position that he does, battling against bigger guys, it doesn't work in the playoffs. How many
So Jay might not be your best 4, but real 4. I mean, the Golden State Warriors may be going to their 6th finals, and who's their 4?
But you're pulling out the unicorn because who's our Steph Curry? Who's our Klay Thompson? They're the
LeBron James went to some who was his 4? His pure.
Well, there were
4.
times where he played the 4. We had Chris Bosh in Miami. He had Kevin Love, and
Yeah, but he didn't have a big center next to him though.
Well, but I said real 4. I don't care who played center. Steve Wadnikas could have played center. He still had a 4.
Okay, but then you're talking DeAndre Ayton, 1 big man. Most of the finals teams had 1 big man.
AD is a 4. My point though is the way the Suns are constructed, they will not get back to the finals. You cannot continue to have an aging point guard who has shown in the playoffs the last 2 years, the deeper it gets, the more it's difficult for him to play every other day. I love this team. I really do. I want them to win. Believe me, I remember the 15 game when sitting in that press box saying, "Is tonight the night that we can go into a happy locker room?" But we also, sometimes when you get your butt kicked, it forces you to be real and it forces you to look at yourself and be honest. And we have to be honest that Chris in the playoffs just runs out of gas a little bit. Teams are going to continue to bully him in the playoffs. So we do need a serviceable backup. We do need another good big at 4. And Devin has to come out and be that dude when it's called on, he has to be the dude that comes out and shoots the ball 20, 30 times. Let me ask you this. Let me reverse this. Let me interview Dave. If Devin came out and put up 35 and they lost, and he was just gunning, and he went down, the old infamous, I'm going down with the ship. I'm the captain of the Titanic. I'm going in there, and I'm going to stand there when the waves come in. We wouldn't be questioning whether he's an A1. We would have been saying, Suns didn't have enough, but dang it, Devin tried and did everything he could. Since that didn't happen, these are real questions now. And the only way he's going to be able to prove it is to get back in that situation and go down doing that. The only way Chris can prove it is to come through a playoff healthy. But to do that, you've got to put him in position, and you got to change what you're doing, because this isn't going to work. Teams have figured it out, and they don't do things well enough to unicorn like the Warriors, because the Warriors have been an anomaly the last few years. That's the unicorn. Like Tom Brady, he's the unicorn. Pocket passers don't work anymore, except him. He's the unicorn. So we can't use that one outlier as the, well, look at them, they're doing it, when nobody else is.
Okay.
I just want to hint on that, because I know you probably want to go to the second quarter here quick, Dave. But the other kind of thing that I was thinking of, and you touched on this, PLR, was kind of going down with the ship and just gunning for it. And I've been thinking kind of who, like on the Warriors, like Draymond Green and these kind of instigators, these guys that get in your face. And it's probably Jay for the Suns right now. But I would have loved for a moment of just a Suns player like almost taunting his own teammates to snap out of it. There was a quick moment in that game 7 where Chris Paul like called everyone in, and they all kind of leaned in. Yep, we're going to get back to it. Okay. But I mean, you know, there's got to be somebody on this team that's willing to go up to Chris Paul and say, you're not doing it right. This isn't working. I mean, he's going to, the last 2 playoffs have shown he's going to be blitzed and full court pressed, because unlike a regular season game, you can send out a Jose Alvarado and just say, hey, all I want you to do is make him work hard to get up here. And if you're the Mavericks and don't have that kind of ability, you tell your 2, long defenders, say, hey, we're going to blitz them as soon as, and keep them far back away from the 3-point line, and just keep them out there and keep them busy. And that's going to wear him down. And there's still not a solution to that problem. Our solution coming into this year was, let's get bigger. Let's get JaVale McGee, who became somebody we couldn't even play in this particular series. So yeah, I think we need to kind of rebalance again and figure out. Maybe we need Chris Paul to not bring the ball up ever, and he just waits on for the ball.
Well, you
to be
can't have
brought
your
to
point
him.
guard not bringing the ball up ever. But I get your point.
Yeah, when they're doing that,
Suns,
a lot more.
I think the Suns need another person who can reliably bring the ball up and get their own shot. Eric Gordon, God, Jesus Christ.
I was just going to say,
if I never
did
hear
you spot the Eric Gordon in the chat
again. Good Lord. Good Lord. Are you still also pining over that girl that wouldn't go out with you in high school? I mean, come on. Get over it.
I'm just saying we could have gotten Kyrie if we would have traded Josh Jackson, Dave. We just should have traded that pick.
Probably should have.
Actually, in
Kyrie
retrospect,
and we'd be blaming Kyrie for not getting to the final. No, I don't envy any team that has Kyrie on their books. And Sean Marks doesn't envy any team that has Kyrie on their books either, because the GM of the Nets said going into the offseason, where Kyrie is not signed for next year, says, we really value people who show up. He literally said that. So I wonder what's going to happen with the Kyrie thing. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second quarter. I did have to block a guy just because he's so annoying, by the way, a little while ago. And it's not Lakers fan. Lakers fan, go right ahead. I don't care. I blocked a dude for trying to do the R. Castillo was right stuff. The guy was all over. Sun should have picked Luka for years. Dude, you're not blocked because you think Luka was the right pick. We all do. You're blocked because you're an asshole about it. That's why you're blocked. And you're blocked on Brightside, and you're blocked on Solar Panel, and just goodbye. Go. That's why you're blocked. It's not because of your opinions. What's that?
You should just tell them the only way they're allowed to comment is if they donate money and do the super chat function.
No, I don't even want him back for that because he's just been an asshole for years.
Oh, okay, this is a
About
long running deal.
opinion. This is a long running thing. Goodbye, man. God. Okay.
It's the Toronto
So we're going to
Raptors
move
mascot
on to moving on. So let's assume that the Suns want to make some changes. Let's assume that the Suns are with you guys and they say, you know what, this particular iteration of our team, the way it is with these 5 starters, are not going to win a championship, and we've got to do some refresh. I hear what you're saying, that somebody needs to be able to get into CP's face. Well, nobody on this team is going to get into CP's face because he's like the old man on the team. So if we're going to move forward, you've got to rejigger a couple of things. Now, Chris Paul's not going anywhere because probably nobody wants. And look, there's a lot of loyalty here. Monty Williams loves Chris Paul. James Jones loves Chris Paul. They just need to take some pressure off of him going forward. But I don't see him going anywhere. Devin Booker is not going to go anywhere. Going into the summer, though, I do think the Suns are going to make some moves. They have 9 players under contract right now for next year. $19 million below the luxury tax line. Those 9 players do not include DeAndre Ayton, who is a restricted free agent coming up. Okay. Restricted free agent coming up, DeAndre Ayton. He wants the max, which is 25% of the cap, not 30. You only get 30%. Now, let's just talk about this 30% thing. The 30% was only in if he made all NBA. Okay. He didn't by the end of his 4th year. He didn't. So he's not going to. So 25% is his cap. It's about $29 million a year. The Suns are not going to offer that coming out of the gate. If he can find somebody to offer that to him, then the Suns have a choice to match. I think it's almost certain that the Suns would match if they can't find a trade partner. I also think it's almost certain that the Suns are going to try to look for a good trade partner. So a couple of years ago, I don't know, you guys, there are some, look, DeAndre Ayton has a case. There are some guys with rookie level max contracts out there that don't deserve them, right? That have gotten them. 3 of them actually were in the playoffs this year. Andrew Wiggins got a max contract without deserving it, right? Otto Porter, who also plays for the Warriors today for a minimum, he got a max contract without deserving it. And then D'Angelo Russell got a max contract without deserving it. Nacho, man, if you say Flex is trash one more time, I'm going to have to let you go too. Flex is not trash. Flex knows what the hell he's talking about. You're just jealous. You and your people are just jealous that he might know more than you do, and you won't believe it. So get over yourself. If you say it again, you're out. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. What was I talking about? Now I've lost my thoughts.
You're talking about players that got
DeAndre Ayton,
players.
D'Angelo Russell, max players who don't deserve it. DeAndre Ayton has a reason to want the max contract because other players have gotten it that are much worse than him. Now, D'Angelo Russell is a good case study. How did he get his max contract, guys? How did Otto Porter get his max contract?
Well,
because somebody else wanted to give it to them. Their own team did not. Somebody else did. Porter got his as an offer sheet that I can't remember if they just, I think Washington matched it, or they let him go to the Bulls. I don't remember that exactly, but I'm gonna say D'Angelo Russell. What happened with D'Angelo Russell? He wanted the max. He wasn't going to get it from the Nets, even though he had made the All-Star team that year. Okay, D'Angelo Russell, how did he get it? Do you guys remember?
Well, the actually that was brilliant on the Warriors by paying him because the contract lined up so that way they could trade him for a real star down the line. So they had to do that.
No, you're missing the lead, man. The Warriors needed to trade Kevin Durant because he was gone, and they didn't want to lose him for nothing.
That's it, yeah.
And they traded Kevin Durant to the Nets, and the salary matching mechanism was by offering a max to D'Angelo Russell.
Oh, right.
I was
So,
close. I was in the
if the
same
Suns are,
ballpark.
yeah, but you were like one step later. And then, yes, they thought they could trade him for somebody else they wanted, which turned out to be Andrew Wiggins, which should have been a complete fail for them and turned out better than expected. But anyway, D'Angelo Russell got his max because they needed his team needed a salary match to acquire Kevin Durant. Now, I'm not saying the Suns are going to acquire Kevin Durant this summer, but DeAndre Ayton is now. See, a year ago, he would not have been a salary match candidate because he was still on his rookie contract. This year, signing him and trading him as part of the deal gives you $30 million in salary matching. I think that's what the Suns are going to do. They're going to look for a team who's ready to move on from a guy making $30 million a year, and they're going to use DeAndre Ayton, a 23-year-old rising center who could be all defense one year, could be all-star some year. That dude has a future, a better future than D'Angelo Russell. So I really think that's what the Suns are going to try to do. They're going to try to trade DA and a sign and trade to get themselves a star, a third guy to go with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. That's what I think is going to happen. And it's a perfect, exactly lined up. Let me tell you what else the Suns have done. They've got half a dozen contracts that are between $5 and $10 million a year. They did not have that a year ago. James Jones is a salary cap genius. In this summer, he gave the Suns one more year to see if they could make the finals again. This summer now, he's got half a dozen guys who are perfect trade candidates. One of them, the big chip, being DeAndre Ayton. So, but you can't trade Ayton without bringing back a great player. You don't do the Hakeem Warwick summer. What you do is you bring back a guy who's a really great player on a big contract that you can now afford to acquire. What do you think about? We're not talking names yet because that's in our third quarter.
Okay.
But what do you guys think of what I just shared on the Suns' ability to move guys around? Do you think they're going to trade DA? PLR, you go first.
I think it depends on the contract talk. I think if they could get him to take less than the max, no. If he's not budging, then yes. So I'm hedging on it because I don't think it's just a black and white answer.
Yeah, and albeit I don't think he's gonna bail on his max contract. I think he thinks he can get it. I think his agent thinks he can get it, and that's already kind of the rumor mill that other teams are going to be willing, even though they're not going to be teams you might want to play for. I mean, they'll be willing to pay it, and so when one organization offers to increase your salary by quite a lot, all of a sudden you start to sit back and say, I think I could live in this city, even though I'd have to pick up and move, and might not be as nice. But I think the best thing for this Suns roster, as I kind of started doing the postmortem of Game 7, was we will have a lot of expiring tradable contracts. Jay Crowder has a good contract. Dario Saric is going to be up there at 9+ I think, mil.
Mm-hmm.
And although I really think we could have used him this last series, I mean, so it'll be interesting to see what he might be like a trade deadline type trade. Because I'd be interested to see how you roll with this team.
Torrey Craig.
Let
me go through them. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll go through them for you so you don't have to try to remember. You've got a Torrey Craig at $5 million. You've got Cameron Payne at $6 million. Only one more year guaranteed.
Okay.
Dario Saric at 9.2. Landry Shamet will count as 9.5. Jay Crowder will count as 10.1.
Right.
That is a lot of really good tradable salary filler contracts with guys who can play for another team, play in their rotations. Those are not salary dumps. Then you add in DeAndre Ayton. You could even, probably not, but you could even conceive of an Aaron Holiday sign and trade. He's a restricted free agent, but I think they're probably just going to let him go. Turned out he was a little bit too small to be effective in a playoff setting. That's why they wouldn't even put him out there. But you've got half a dozen guys who are all available that could be included to get over the 30 million. Or if you just decide to keep Ayton after all. Look, man, you guys know, following the solar panel for 5, I have been an Ayton supporter the entire time. But I'm okay moving on as long as you get a player who's at least as good as him. I'm okay moving on, but you cannot Hakeem Warwick this summer or I'll be extremely pissed. You've got to do someone at least as good. I'm still not a big fan of Karl Anthony Towns. I'm still not. And I think Karl Anthony Towns would have been exposed even more than Deandre Ayton in that Dallas series, because Towns has been bad as a playoff player. Bad as a playoff player for 2 different playoffs. But that kind of guy is probably what the Suns are going to be willing to trade DA for. PLR, what's your thoughts on the sign and trade of DA for someone?
Again, see, you said something there that's really that really kind of tweaks everything. Who else is good enough at that price point? See, I hear what you're saying. You don't want to Hakeem Warwick the summer, but another team has to be willing to give up someone who will probably be disgruntled to then want to leave too, because you're not just going to give up yours for theirs. Usually, you trade better players. The Suns are in a weird position because they're a team that's a couple pieces away from getting to the finals. Usually when you're trading your star, you're resetting, or a star, you're resetting. So you're trading him for contracts or dumps or whatever. Usually,
yeah, but if you don't want to be seen as a loser, what if you're the Portland Trailblazers and you want to move on from Damian Lillard? I'm not saying that would happen, but what if you are? Wouldn't it be nice? Because you have to do salary matching. You have to.
Right,
do the trade. Wouldn't it be nice to have DeAndre Ayton come in?
But I was talking from the Suns' point of view, not from Portland's point of view. Portland would be willing to say, okay, we'll take an up-and-coming guy that's young because we're rebuilding. But for another team, when we're getting into the Cats and those teams, I don't know if Minnesota would make that deal now because they're on the rise, and we're not going to say, oh, wow, here's our guy that can shoot 3, even though he may not perform well in the playoffs as of yet. Why are we going to trade our guy that can shoot 3s, get energetic? The fans love him, but we're going to trade him to a team that can beat us with him, and then we'll take their guy back. So it's a tricky trade. It really, truly is. It's a tricky trade,
but I think that is definitely something the Suns are going to look at. I think is they're going to look to see if another team has an established star that they can't get far. They can't get far enough in the playoffs either, so they're willing to shake it up. Now, I do not see DA going to a team that's rebuilding. Like there's rumors that Detroit might want to make an offer for DA this summer. That's not going to happen. Suns are not going to trade DA for beef stew. They're not.
We'll take Kate.
I don't think Jeremy Grant is Hakeem working this summer. If you trade DA for Jeremy Grant, you've just Hakeem worked another effing summer for the Suns, and I don't want that to happen. You've got to get better. Don't say Jeremy Grant to me. I'm going to throw you out.
Dave laying down the law today. So what do you guys think about this? Here's my concern is I think if we can do a sign and trade that obviously makes good sense, I hope we can do it. My concern is the only teams offering him, max contracts are the kind of bottom feeding teams right now. And we don't want to do a sign and trade with them. So we meet the match. And then we carry him all the way to the trade deadline, and every player has to sit there and be like, "Oh no, we're totally getting along. This is all about camaraderie. We're in it to win it. We're rolling this thing back." And then, of course, it's just waiting until we have enough teams that become desperate and realize they're not going to make the playoffs, that need to make a big swing, and we take somebody off their hands. I'd hate for that to have to be the mentality, because the PR spin that the team's going to have to go through, like, "Oh yeah, no, we're all in it to win it," and it's either they got to have that come to Jesus moment, come to Monty moment, where they're all kind of back on the same wavelength of right mentality together. And I think that's possible, I think. But I think the more realistic thing is to find the better option is to find a great trade partner this offseason rather than carry it until the trade deadline. Those other contracts as 1 year expirings would make more sense for the trade deadline.
Yeah. The P. Castillo in the chat says they almost traded Ayton for Sabonis. I'm not a Sabonis fan. The Kings lost more after the trade than they did before the trade. I'm just not a Sabonis fan. Again, if you're trying to do playoff matchups and stuff, you've got to have two-way players. Got to have guys who can shut down the other player and get their own shot. Sabonis can make his own shot happen, yes, but he can't stop anybody else from doing it.
I would love if we could get Sabonis for like a Jay Crowder and add him to a DA. I would like that addition. I wouldn't like him for him. But if there was a way to work him in for, line those contracts up that way, I'd go for it. The one thing though, Dave, that Sabonis is tough. And he's mentally tough. So if you're going to give up a guy like Jay Crowder that's tough, you got to go get a guy that's tough. And the one thing Sabonis can do is get you easy paint points. The one thing the Suns don't have in this, I'm going to rewind way back when I said I blame them too. The one thing, even if you look at the game last night with the Warriors, their points in the paint were ridiculous. If you go back and look at Boston, their points in the paint is ridiculous. The Suns never did anything with Ayton to allow him to get you easy points. And if you're going to have an athletic big that can do so much, and I know there's still things he needs to learn, with dribbling and getting himself set up, I understand that. But at no time really in Game 7 did they attempt to get easy points. That's where I blame Monty and I blame Chris, because sometimes you got to do that. And so,
BTS dance user, sorry, I had to block you. You're being annoying and you're swearing all over and you're using racist stuff, so you're out. I got no time for people like that today. PLR,
button,
sorry
Jake.
to interrupt you.
Dave, just put the gun down. Nobody's going to have to get hurt. I know we're all hurting, man. We're all hurting.
With you, PLR, 100%. Yeah. Yes. So the Suns, yeah.
So I'm curious though.
I'm sorry, PLR. You were talking about. I was distracted by that
dance studio.
But you were talking about points in the paint. The Suns were not trying. But here's the problem with the Suns on the points in the paint. Cameron Johnson doesn't have enough wiggle to get the shot off consistently in the paint unless he knows how the contact's going to go. Jay Crowder has no wiggle at all, and he's got negative vertical, like he goes down when he jumps. Jay Crowder's problem. That's
reminds me of Paul Pierce when he shoots. Yeah, just kind of
goes
scoots
down
off the ground just a bit.
Yeah, like he loses vertical. And then Mikal Bridges just doesn't want the contact. I mean, look, I love Mikal Bridges. He has a great smile. He's a cool dude, wonderful dude. But he likes contact less than DA, and nobody gives him shit for it. So that's I have a problem with that. Jay Schneck, do you like Miles Turner? Yeah, we'll talk about players in the next section, but not for this team. This team would even be more rooted. Look, if you don't want to get rooted in the playoffs, you don't want Miles Turner. He's a great defensive player as long as he's within 10 feet of the paint. Nobody wants to get rooted in the playoffs.
But that goes back to points in the paint. We got to watch the names that we're going after. As Miles Turner is an energy guy center, but he's not going to get you points in the paint. Deandre Ayton is a skilled big. I know he can be soft. Listen, I'm not saying he's tough He-Man with the cape, but there are things you can do with his skill set that could have got you easy buckets, especially when Maxi Kleber and Powell are guarding him, who he can literally run down court and do this thing that everyone loves to do now. The Suns didn't do that. They had a Swiss Army knife and they only used the corkscrew. They didn't open up that whole thing. So when you say, can we run it back? Dave, yes, we can run it back. And I'm kind of tired of everything we've done together. We can run it back, but we got to make some other changes. You got to get him another big to help him. And you got to be able to utilize his offensive skills and not give him his first shot 6 minutes into a game that you're already getting your ass kicked mentally and on the scoreboard. It's too late.
Yeah, I'm also tired of people creating their own narratives. The Dark Phoenix #3, love you. Thank you for being a Suns fan. I think you're more of a CP3 fan than a Suns fan, though. We are not only talking about CP3 falling short. I have spent the entire episode complaining about all the other players on the team. So if you want to create a narrative in your own head, feel free. But that ain't what's happening here.
I got nervous, Dave, as soon as you said the person's name. I was like, no, he's gone. It's over for Dark Phoenix.
I'm leaving him for a little bit.
Okay. Well,
Nacho
How
Man,
many
thank
people
you
have you canceled,
for backing
Dave?
off. Only a
no
couple
time
so
for it
far.
today. No time for it today. PLR, what would your thoughts be if, I mean, assuming we're going to have a healthy Dario Saric, is that enough of a, even if he's not starting, is that enough of a solid number 4
No.
player to help him
No.
out?
But Dario's
No.
Dario's but Dario's a tweener. Not fast enough to be a 4, not big enough
Okay.
to be a 5. That's my
And
opinion.
plus, I
PLR?
think it's going to take Dario all the way up to almost All-Star break to see what you really have, because you can't come off I'm a believer. Summer isn't enough to prove to me you're ready. You have to go and play some real games, and you have to get some real minutes, and you have to get some real time, and it usually takes you about a month or two to do that. So I don't really think we'll know what we'll have with Darich until we get to the All-Star break, and that's why I think if you're going to move him, that's when the team would take him, because they'll be saying, "Wait a second,
Build
how
his
do we know
value.
he's right again?" So you'll get pennies instead of dimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you cannot go into another playoffs. Look, Dark Phoenix, you have to admit, you can't go into another playoffs with CP as your only ball handler. But beyond that, everybody failed in this playoffs, and nobody picked up for him. And the Suns have to work around it. Now, Monty Williams and James Jones Monty Williams said the most interesting things this week. One thing he said is, where did it go? And I learned that lesson from Kevin Durant after last year's finals. Kevin Durant was like, "Coach, look, the playoffs, when you get deep into it, you gotta stop a guy from getting a bucket, and you got to go get a bucket. And a lot of the teams have guys that can do that." And he was talking about in context of outside of Book and CP. He was saying they need a third guy who can score. They need a third guy who can go get a bucket. Monty Williams also said that they were going to look at their schemes and their makeup of their team and stuff like that. So I would definitely expect the Suns to make some changes to their course. And now let's throw out some questions. These are true falses. I want you guys to weigh in on what you think. Everybody in the chat as well. These are true falses. True or false? Kevin Durant will be in a Suns uniform next year. Jake.
Very false.
What do you think of the percent chance that Kevin Durant is in a Suns uniform?
0% chance that he makes it to the Suns. I'm not even hedging to 1. I'm going 0.
PLR?
Hell no. And the chances are minus 5%. Hell no. He's not leaving Brooklyn for Phoenix.
Kevin Durant actually might be a little disappointed in how Brooklyn worked it out. You know, how it worked out there. Now he's only got Kyrie with him, and Kyrie can't even count on, and who knows what's going to happen with the Kyrie and all that. But I think you guys are all right. It's about Pete Castillo says minus 4% chance. Yeah, for sure. But that is a name that got thrown out in the Twitter sphere this week as a potential target, just because he has said positive things about the Suns. Okay, true or false? Karl Anthony Towns is wearing a Suns uniform next year. PLR, will start with you.
Oh, real quick, Kevin Durant also knows weed is legal here in Phoenix, so he'll always say positive things about places where you can smoke a little something. Karl Anthony Towns, I think that ship sailed. I think that was a trade that could have been made a couple of years ago or a year ago. Now I think it's tough. I think Minnesota likes their core, so I'm going to say false.
I'll say false too. To me, it's and I think you hinted at this, PLR. It's a little bit like reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's okay, we have a big guy that's better on defense, and you have a big guy that's better at shooting from the outside a little bit more. Let's just swap. Well, it doesn't make sense really for either team. I mean, they need something bigger. We need something bigger. It's not just, all we needed was a little bit more outside shooting. That wasn't going to get it done. So I don't think it's just, trade. I really don't expect DeAndre Ayton to be traded for another true center unless the center is the secondary part of that trade package.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to say, hey, that leads us right into P-Dog, gave us a $2.69 donation. I'm going to split that 3 ways once I get my calculator out. P-Dog, thank you so much for the donation in the super chat. He's suggesting Bradley Beal and Thomas Bryant for DA. Who says no? PLR?
I like I love Bradley Beal. Here's the problem. Bradley Beal loves Washington. That's as weird as it is, he loves playing there. He had an opportunity to move a lot of different times. So when you go out though and you get a Bradley Beal, there's some other pieces. This goes back to the Damian Lillard thing. Is Devin willing to play the three? Because you're not getting Bradley Beal to bring him off the bench. You're getting him to be a starter along the three. So you're doing that hybrid three guard. And if
you'd have to move Devin Booker to small forward, and then does Mikal play power forward? The dude who averages 3 rebounds a game.
Exactly. So when you do that, I like it, but then you have to go get a real. Dave hates that phrase, a real 4, because now you need size. You need some size to help. And here's my other question: does Devin play defense good enough to play the threes we have in the NBA now?
No, he's not big enough. He plays
he's
good
playing
enough,
a lot better, but
as long as the guys aren't totally overpowering him physically.
So he can't match up against real threes.
Well, super threes. So all the threes are super size now. Nice.
So
the next,
that would be my question.
Yeah. Okay, Jake, what do you say?
Yeah, I think P-Dog's idea, it's not bad, but that's okay. If you're going to do that, you better have another piece to the puzzle at that point, because I just don't see a Paul, Beal, Booker lineup. And and Bryant's what, 6'9"? I mean, he's good for the position he plays, but that's going really small when I feel like we're already pretty small. And yeah, Mikal's not going to guard 4s very well. Right. You
got everybody out of position at that point.
Exactly. I like the idea, but then it's okay. Now we would have to look to trade some of these, Paul and Mikal, maybe for someone else at that point too.
Which you don't want to do. I don't want to trade Mikal for anything. Even as soft as he is, if we're going to use the soft thing. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people are like, yeah, the Beal thing doesn't quite fit with the Suns. Thomas Bryant would be kind of an effective dive guy for the Suns. I don't have a problem with that, although he missed most of last year with the injuries. Yeah, so I don't know. The next person I've got, true, false, and people have suggested this in the chat. So let's go next into this. Is LeBron James going to be in a Phoenix Suns uniform next year? PLR.
Can I say hell no to a second time? No, he is not leaving LA. He likes the LA life. He is not coming here. He's not going anywhere. He's staying right there in LA. Let his kid keep playing basketball in school in LA. He is there. Plus, people keep saying that. Let me give you some LeBron James rules. When he comes in, he blows up everyone on a roster that he doesn't like, and he brings in a bunch of one-year dudes. Yeah. So he thinks he can get a title right now. And it never happens the first year. It usually happens the second year. So you're expecting then a 40-year-old LeBron James to give you something that he couldn't do the last couple of years. So hell no. I wouldn't, honestly, I think he's the most untradeable player in the NBA. I wouldn't trade for him.
Jake.
Interesting. I'd say definitely no, but I'll say 2%. Better chance than Kevin Durant.
Better than zero.
Better than zero. Yeah. No, I could see, some sort of meltdown of something hitting his psyche if they're not going to make the playoffs again or something because they can't get out of the Westbrook contract and AD goes down again. Then maybe he says, hey, I got to get out of here. I want to go try and pick up another title. Phoenix isn't that far away. I can do this for a season and then find out, where Bronny wants to get drafted to.
All right, next one. Russell Westbrook. He would fit salary-wise in for DA. Would you trade DA for what? Russell Westbrook, PLR.
If I traded for Russell Westbrook, it would actually be CP. It wouldn't be DA. And I'm being honest about that. I would make that deal work before, because if things don't work with Russell Westbrook and it blows up, you have $47 million coming off your books the following year. So I would rather see that trade happen. Not saying I want to see it. So I'm going to say false, but I wouldn't make a DA trade for him. I'd make a Chris Paul trade. And we have to start being real about Chris Paul.
Oh,
We
my
can love the
God.
guy all to death, but I'm being serious. I'm not saying I would do
You
it.
were hot for
but
a
we-
little while, PLR, but that's cold. That's cold.
well, it's true. We love Chris Paul, but he is 37. And Jake, you said it. What was it? The time father time catches everybody. So if there was a trade, I'm not saying do it, but
Okay, I was going to say, don't pull me into this Russell
Dude, I'm
Westbrook.
throwing up
John.
in my mouth right now.
Listen, I'm not saying do it, but if you were going to make that trade, it wouldn't be DA. It would be Chris Paul.
No, to Westbrook. I mean, that is, I mean, he is CP3 in the playoffs all last season of just a shell of what he was. And at least Paul, can give you an entire season before they start blitzing him and take him down a notch. The only way I would consider it
of last 5 of CP. There you go.
Yeah. But what about this? Well, and I don't even know if the salaries would fit, right? Because Westbrook's on that super max, so you'd have to throw in more than just DA.
Million.
Yeah.
You'd have to throw in everything.
Yeah. So no, unless and PLR will love this. Unless they're sending us a true 4, a real 4, like an Anthony Davis back in that trade, who's going to be injured as soon as his flight lands into Sky Harbor.
Austin Reeves. No, let's just take Austin Reeves. He can shoot.
Well, at least
and that's
play.
my point. That's why I'm saying no. Listen, let me go back. I said no. False. You don't want him.
You did not say no. Him, I've got recording here. You're going to say trade CP for Russell Westbrook. That's what you said.
I said if you were going to bring him in, don't trade DA, trade CP3. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't make that move for DA.
So you're saying if the world's ending, exactly like your escape plan. You find a good spot, but it's still the world's ending. The world's ending, but you've thought ahead of how to make it somewhat more palatable.
Exactly.
So,
I got to take
the
penicillin.
CP is retiring as a Phoenix Sun. Devin Booker's retiring as a Phoenix Sun. Mikal Bridges is retiring as a Phoenix Sun. DA is the one we're talking about here, and I would not trade him for Russell Westbrook. My last true false. I'm going to throw this. I'm going to switch it up. We're not even going to talk about that individual. It's just a joke. I was going to say Ben Simmons, but no, we're not going to ask about Ben Simmons for DA. What we're going to do is I'm going to throw out
percentage chance.
I'm going to throw out Pascal Siakam.
Ooh, I was hoping you'd do that.
Pascal Siakam for DA.
Siakam.
Jake.
No, I think I'd be very interested in that. The Raptors were kind of undersized, but everyone was long. So I'd be interested to see what they would do with a kind of a truer center there. Now you got me doing a PLR, a truer and a real position play. But yeah, I think it's possible. I think the Raptors, I saw some people on Twitter just Raptors fans probably just hating the idea of why would we trade our best player for this? But it's because you guys aren't going to go any further, I think, than where you currently went, which is the first round knockout.
Mm-hmm.
And DA is going to develop further. I think Pascal could get a little bit better too, but he doesn't have that kind of potential developmental arc that DA might have. And Siakam would be very interesting to me. Then you bring in, I don't know, another defensive center or something to kind of help it out. But he can put the ball on the ground a little bit too, which obviously would have helped a lot more in the playoffs. And I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't know. I'd be very open to it. I'd say 30%.
PLR.
I love it, but you got to include Precious because I'm telling you, I want a dude on the Suns named Precious. So if you get Precious and Pascal for him, let's make it happen. In fact, I drive DA to the airport. You bring back Pascal and Precious. I'm all for that. So let's make that happen. Dave, 120%. Let's make that one happen. I'd do it tomorrow.
If Precious was in there.
Gotta throw Precious in, though. Precious and Pascal.
Stat me, Precious.
All right. Sounds like DA needs his passport stamped. He's already got one anyway because he's from the Bahamas. So we're good there. Okay. Last one. This is not on the list. So I'm just going to ask you guys. Damian Lillard. What are the chances? Now, that would be probably CP going out. It would have to. I don't see how you bring in Dame to play with CP and Devin Booker, kind of like the same argument as Brad Beal.
Mm-hmm.
But would you do Dame and sending out CP?
Yeah.
PLR,
go
I'm sorry, Jake, go ahead. You started talking, Jake.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I would do that. I know some people are saying that I think we'd have to look at taking Nurkic back, in terms of kind of salary matching. If we were to,
That's fine because
yeah, and he's
yep.
serviceable. He's a solid guy. He wouldn't have to be, they kind of try to make him their top 3 player. And for us, he'd be the 5th of the starters, and so I think you could do that. I think Dame would be great. I don't see him having to deal with as much of the blitzing and full court press, even though he is a little bit, I think he's 33 maybe. But I think PLR, I might steal some of your thunder, but from everything I get about Dame, he kind of likes Portland too. But I think, when you see everyone around you get dealt and let go, it's harder to, be like, oh, let's run it back again. I think at that point I could see, I'd like to see Dame Lillard next to Booker. I know it'd be a little bit of Olay defense, but if we could find a true 4 to go with Mikal and then a defensive center, I think we could lock some people up too.
I am all over that, and I have no issue with moving CP out for him. And I don't want to call.
Well, yeah, you were going to move him for Russ, so you might.
I said if. I said if, but I would definitely move him for Dame. Dame and Booker would be an incredible backcourt, and you definitely could not blitz either one of them. And we are kind of, we got to put some respect on Nurkic's name. Remember, before Joker became Joker, Nurkic was playing good ball in Denver. And obviously they saw what Joker could do and moved him out. But before he had that one leg break early in his career at Portland, he was a good double guy. And the one thing he is, and I keep saying this, maybe I sound like a bully, but he's tough. He's not someone that you're just going to push around and move out of the paint. He's going to, you give him an elbow, he's giving you one back. So I think the Suns need a tough guy in that position. And so, yes, and Jake, you hit on it as well. Yes, he kind of has that Bradley Bill. He doesn't want to leave the ship. The difference is he's saying all his guys leave the ship. So Portland's showing him we're getting younger and we're just going to lose. And I think the difference is Bill always was on a losing team, whereas Dame was on teams that went to the playoffs. So mentally, it would be harder for him to accept a rebuild at 33 and stay there through it, whereas Bradley has always been like, well, hell, if we make the playoffs, we did something. So I think the mentality on the teams are different. So I think Dame is finally, by him not coming back this year, showed you that mentally he's probably understanding he may be moving on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think the Trailblazers, right, might be more open to it because, again, DA would be somebody that they could kind of try and build around. And CP3 is guaranteed this coming season and then partially the next and then could be totally voided out the following, right, Dave?
Say it again.
So
CP3.
he's guaranteed.
Yeah, he's fully guaranteed for next year.
But then
half guaranteed the year after, and fully non-guaranteed the year after that. Yep.
Yeah, and so I mean the Trailblazers they did blow it up, and so I mean we've been through this, Suns fans. What happens when you're towards the bottom of the league? You will take on kind of harsher contracts for young players that you can develop and for draft picks. And so if CP3 comes in and can help teach the young guys for a year and a half, or then that could be pretty good. And then you just turn it over to DA and the draft picks you're accumulating.
Well, and even if DA is not involved, the Suns have a lot of these guys are only one more year guaranteed, so they're basically expiring. So, and I know expiring isn't as big a deal as it used to be, but if you're a team like this Portland this past year who was dumping for summer, you would take on expirings. So, we'll see. Keep DA and bring in Amari to coach him. No, Amari's not a coach, guys. I mean, he is theoretically a coach, but he's not a coach. And DA and Amari, you can't get blood from a stone. But anyway, okay, so that is our set of true false. Now I've got one last question for y'all, and then we're going to close this out. My last question is, when I wrote it in here as the biggest, but I'm going to change it. I'm going to say, what is the first name to leave the Suns this summer via trade, and why? First guy to leave the Suns via trade, and why? Give me
Are
your
you looking
best
for something?
guess.
Are you looking for something different than the DA trade
Well,
talks that have been
DA
going
can
on?
only be traded in July because of the restricted free agency stuff.
Right.
So James Jones is very fond of DA actually, or sorry, but James Jones is very fond of draft day trades. He's done a lot of them. So DA could not be traded by then. So who do you think is the first name to be traded away this summer? You could still
Cam
say
Johnson.
DA, that's fine, but
Cam Johnson.
whoa, I don't see Cam going. He's no, he's not. He could be traded. You think Cam?
Yeah, I mean, it would be Cam and then either like a Crowder or a Dario with him, I think, to add, that higher salary, because Cam's still on his rookie contract, right?
Why
he
does it
wouldn't- he
serve
wouldn't be
me
able to
right?
fetch
Sorry,
anything.
not 20s Buffalo guy. Why does it serve me right that the Suns are out of the pool? What do I have to do with any of this? Maybe you're a little bit too worried about all this stuff. But hey,
The
welcome back, buddy.
Black fingers.
Love you.
Why should-
I love it when trolls are so sad in real life that they have to go find fans of other teams to try to say how awesome they are, because nobody in their inner circle will tell them that. So they have
Yeah.
to tell themselves by trolling other teams' fans.
Which
Love
reminds me,
you
I got to
too.
hop off this and go to the Orlando Magic podcast later on, so I
Jesus
can make myself feel better.
Christ.
You guys didn't even make the playoffs. You suck. You suck.
Yeah. How sad are you in life that you have to go find another team's fans to troll them? I've never once done that in my life. Okay. Biggest name to leave the Suns. First name to leave the Suns via trade, Jake.
Yeah, I wish I could be spicier than Cam. I don't think I could be. So I'll just take the safer bet and say that Dario's going out because he's got 9+ on the salary cap, and somebody will take that as a filler and offload somebody else to us.
Yeah, so the Suns, it's interesting. James Jones acquired Dario as a filler, right? In a draft pick swap. Suns have no draft picks in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if this year they're going to reverse course, because what they did is they used their draft picks to acquire veterans, right? They acquired Shamet in a draft day deal for a pick. They acquired Dario in a draft day deal for a pick. Cam Johnson was part of those draft day deals. And I wonder if they're going to go the other direction this time and actually trade out Dario for a pick or trade out Shamet for a pick. Although Monty Williams, I don't know why, but Landry Shamet is Monty Williams' love child. He is.
I still don't like that contract.
He's still trying to make Landry happen. Stop trying to make it happen.
What
not
would you guys
gonna
say then if they tried to trade like a campaign for like a mid-20s first-round pick?
I don't know if that'd be fine with that.
No one's going to do that.
No
one's going to do
No one's
that.
gonna do it, but
No.
if somebody
a
would do
proven
it-
entity of a what should be a very solid backup point guard for and a part of the draft where a lot of guys they're not even still on the roster in a couple of years.
No one's going to. I tell you what,
Russell Westbrook to Phoenix confirmed.
I'm going to trade you my ice cream for a good humor coupon that don't expire until 2024. No one's going to do that.
We'll throw in Landry Shamet.
What about Abdul Nader? Why don't they bring Abdul Nader back at that point?
Yeah, no kidding. Or Elliot Kobo before him. So there was Elliot Kobo, who got inexplicable minutes, and then there's Abdul Nader, who got inexplicable minutes, and then now you've got Landry Shamet with inexplicable minutes.
As long as we bring back Frank the Tank, this will be a good offseason.
So we ran
agree.
out
That
of
was
time
bad
today.
karma.
We haven't
Yeah.
Frank the Tank. You know what? I think there's like a 99% chance Frank the Tank signs a minimum contract to come back next year. The Suns are going to use up all their money. They're going to be to the point where they can only do minimum contracts. Frank's going to be like, "Hey," and then he's just going to show up.
Hey,
In fact,
PLR
you know
just
what?
said
The
it.
Suns started losing as soon as they released Frank.
No, exactly. Suns fans have been looking for an answer. There it is, everybody. We figured it out. We should not have
Bad
let
karma.
Frank go. He was a
Yeah.
loyalist. You know, he wanted to be on this team. He plays the 4, kind of the 5. He's a tweener. Can't do enough of any, but we
Tell
could
you
have
what,
used him. We could have used
why
him
don't
against
why don't
Dallas.
why don't we
We
trade
actually could have
Alfred
used him against
Payton?
Dallas.
Why don't we trade Alfred Payton and campaign for Damian Lillard? What about we gotta have the people in there talking crap like that. Hey, we can make it work. We don't care that there's a $40 million deficit in that trade. We'll trade Alfred Payton for Dame straight up and a couple of coupons to Lou Malnati's Pizza. How about that? Let's make that work.
Coupons? The coupons?
All right, we'll throw in Ish Wainwright, but that's where I draw the line on that.
That's
trade,
enough, yeah.
That's where I limit it. We're already getting rid of Alfred. He was a full-time starter for the Knicks, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
He is talented.
We're crying
Number 1
out
pick.
loud.
Yeah.
Wow. On the Alfred note, that's where we're going to close out this show.
He made it. He made it into the game, just
He
like
made it
usual,
into the
at
show.
the very end.
All right. PLR, tell us where we can find you around the web and on the
Cave
radio
Show.
and all that.
Cave Show every day. A special time for June, 3:30, Block Talk Radio live, so you can call in and be heard. But yes, no, I will hang up on you.
You
Dave
got
Block.
good guests on that show too.
Hey, just had a great one the other day. Mr. Dave King came on. So we have a lot of fun, though. I will, but like I said, I hang up. Dave Blocks, I hang up. I don't mind hanging up on your ass. It's actually a lot of fun. And then on the Twitter, the Facebook, and the Instagram at the Sports Cave. And if you are brave, you'll follow me at PLR on Sports. But notice I don't just talk sports. I get into stuff. So it's fun, though. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Dan. I
like
appreciate it.
what is it? What
Soap
do you
operas?
watch?
Days of Our
Soap
Lives,
operas.
man.
Days of Our
Days.
Lives,
I
yeah.
love Days of Our Lives. I will light you up on Days of Our Lives. Yes,
If
sir.
you want to talk Days of Our Lives, there you go, man.
Right here. I'm the one.
Oh, hey, Michael Lockhart, free Ife Lundberg. Look, Ife Lundberg is still on a 2-way, and you're probably going to see him in Summer League, actually. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets signed to a minimum contract for next year, too. Okay, Jake, where can we find you?
Find me on Twitter at Fallen Founder.
All right, man. And I am Dave King. You can find me at Dave King NBA on Twitter. You can find all my writing at brightsideofthesun.com and obviously on this podcast. So we'll see y'all again next week. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you guys. We got a big summer coming, and we'll have a more realistic true false the closer we get to the trade deadline on players who actually could be moved or potentially could come to the Suns. Today, I was just having fun getting some things out because I saw these names being thrown around the social media sphere this week as potential trades for DA, and I had to laugh at all of them. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I appreciate you, and we'll see you again next time.